Hello everybody, and glad to be here at the UNSTUCK Conference of 2021. My name is Njoroge. I've been an entrepreneur for many years. I'm supposed to share with you my story and my journey, and hopefully to build some level of relatability to what a journey of sort of building a business and a family and life kind of looked like from my perspective. I'll probably do that by starting with a little bit of where I come from. So I'm a firstborn in a family of two, brought up by a single parent in Nakuru. I went to a high school called Menengai. Our family was sort of short of cash, but incredibly rich on values. My mom was incredibly tough, very focused on discipline. She had a very clear vision for what she wanted us to turn out to be. We were brought up to be really disciplined and to really do our best in anything we touched. So I did, with that sort of eye on hand supervision, I did quite well in school. Sometime in '92, did my high school, ended up in Nairobi, set to resume University of Nairobi to study pharmacy. We always got told to work hard, do well in school, go get a good course, and get a good job. In between the period between high school and going to University of Nairobi, I had a 2-year break, like we all did at the time, and ended up in Strathmore with a scholarship. We couldn't afford Strathmore at the time. That completely changed the course of what my life became. I think Strathmore was an incredibly orderly institution. I also fell in love with computers at the time. So I did that, finished a higher diploma 2 years, and then went across to University of Nairobi like I was supposed to. Remember that Strathmore was stopgap, so that I could continue to university, which was a path I was set on to. And so that transition maybe formed one of the most fundamental transitions in my life. Moving from an orderly institution and crossing over to University of Nairobi, a couple of things sort of didn't check out. One, I found out that I didn't particularly like pharmacy school. I didn't like pharmacy, I didn't like medicine. We did a lot of shared courses with the medicine students. I didn't particularly like the course. The institution at the time wasn't very organized. Coming from very organized, very disciplined institution, going across to something that's somewhat chaotic, lots of riots and so on, didn't quite sit well with me. And I think the story of going to school, working hard, learning hard, and ending up with a good job started to unravel. Because we had taught that, at university you're the best of the best, and you work hard, you get there. And I couldn't reconcile the best of the best with the chaos that I found at the time. Young guy coming out of Nakuru. Nairobi was interesting life, university, lots of freedom, and so on and so forth. And that whole mix says, we started to explore life. My course in pharmacy was very rigorous course. So I stopped attending class and so on, and I became disillusioned about being the best of the best in an institution that had a lot of chaos. I ended up failing my first year and repeating. This was quite a shock. I'd never failed, at least academically, in my life. But when I repeated, by the 6th month, it became very clear that I certainly wanted to pursue a different course in life. I think at the time it was difficult because my mom was away. She was out of the country. She had been out of the country for a while. And over many years, you had been told that this was a course to follow. And me living in that course became very clear that this just did not necessarily make any sense. So I took a hard decision at the time. I can't remember any single person who thought it was a wise decision to sort of drop out of University of Nairobi and then go back to Strathmore and pursue computers. So I did that. I was clear that pharmacy wasn't my thing, medicine wasn't my thing, but I was also very clear that probably that institution didn't work for me. So I went back to Strathmore and set on a course that actually defined my journey for the next 22 years. So coming out of there, it was very clear that I wanted to sort of build a business, and I was interested in computers at the time. At the age of 23, around 98, together with a couple of friends, we co-founded, my first business was a web development firm. It was new at the time. It was a company called 3 Mice. So that was a 5-year journey. We worked and built a company that was a very interesting journey, a very well-known company at the time, but we made no money, right? So it was always debatable whether it was a successful 5 years. I think it was, because I came out of that with a lot of knowledge, had built a fairly good reputation in the industry. And then sometime in 2003 and 2004, that partnership came to an end, and then decided to actually start a company called Cellulant, which became a mobile platform for transactions for banks and for payments over the 18 years that I ran the company. So the founding of the company was interesting. I think this was a second attempt, so I knew what to do, and I'd also learned some lessons about what to focus on. So that journey was very incredibly difficult, because starting a company, didn't have capital, there was no structures to actually raise capital, meant that the first few years were incredibly difficult, because businesses do need capital to start. It does happen. At the time, I was also sort of starting a family, got married. My beautiful wife, Wangoi, of 16 years, actually was one of the first early investors in the business. First invested her own time in helping me put together accounts and so on and so forth. She was a banker. And also just investing her heart and her dreams in the business. She took a decision to stop her career to take care of the family, and then we got 3 kids in sort of quick succession. So it was very difficult, basically building a business and starting a family. But we're determined. We wanted to build a highly successful family. We wanted to build also a very successful business. And both were non-negotiable. So that is what we set out to do. I think we made progress on both fronts, fairly decent progress, because it was a partnership from very early on. Incredibly open relationship, and it's always an interesting story in our honeymoon. I remember one evening looking at my wife, and she looked a little bit happy and bubbly. And it struck in my mind, does she actually know what the journey of building a company, building a family when we have no money is going to look like? And I asked her to bring a notebook, and I remember writing on the notebook, the business income at the time, it was 0. My salary was 0. And the debt status of company and myself was at the time about 20 million shillings or so. And so I looked at her and I told her, look, when you look at this situation here, it's going to be difficult for a very long time. And I think that was a fantastic foundation, a fantastic lesson for one of the tenets that really defined the success of the family and the business. I think as we built the business, and the business went on to become the largest payments company with a presence in 18 countries. We started off with a vision of sketching on a serviette, sketched it on a serviette. 2 people, no money, as you probably know now. And through this sort of steady pace, also built this into a company that has 400 people. 400 people in 18 countries. Family grew. Firstborn son, 2 daughters, and then along the way we adopted 2 other older kids. So fantastic journey. So what did I learn from this journey about life and about building business? So I think from the beginning, the honest and open was always something that worked for me. Just that thing that I did with my wife, I did with the kids when we went through very difficult financial times. And there were, not just at the beginning, but also at several times in the business when the business did run into rocky patches at different times for different reasons. Just putting the cards on the table, no delays, laying the cards as it is and inviting everybody to sort of find a solution and a pathway forward. I did that with my wife at the beginning. We did that with the kids at different times. And in the business very early on, also did that with staff members. Just, if in the early years when we're building the business, I always went for the sort of best talent I could find. And I always had a frank conversation around them and say, look, we want to build one of the most successful company in Africa for Africa by Africans. We probably won't afford you. We probably want you to take a pay cut to join the business. Your salary probably in the early days isn't going to be consistent. And I'm going to take no prisoners in getting the best out of you. And I would talk to 10 people, 9 people would think I'm crazy. One person would be crazy enough to actually follow, right? And over time, built a phenomenal team that sort of grew the business over time. So that's one fundamental principle, just being open to customers, to family, and so on and so forth in the journey. And by doing that, the weight was always lower, right? It was always less weight, I always felt. And you have no shame, right? So, failure comes once in a while, even to the best. And hard times come, right? If you live on your values, you work hard, they do come. So there's no shame, put the cards on the table, and so on. I found a lot of support from suppliers, from customers, and so on by putting cards on the table. The other sort of big lesson was that, building a business and family is always a team sport. I think my wife and I talk about it. We say that it takes a village to raise a family. It takes a village to build a good business. It takes a village to actually build a good marriage as well. And so I always had no ego in seeking help when I needed it, whether it was in the family or the marriage or the business. None. And I think that served me well. It wasn't always very comfortable at first, but over time, as you practice it and you see that it actually works, you get more courage to put bigger problems in front of people that know a lot more than you, people that have walked a journey further than you have, and so on. And so it was always refreshing, just picking up the phone, going across to somebody and just saying, you know what, I'm struggling here. I don't have a clue. I'm in a jam, and business people and so on. People would write you checks, they would invest, or whatever it is that needed to be done. I think the final thing in conclusion was always the journey of staring at self in the mirror. So I think, across all the different things, there's all kinds of events that happened that shaped the business, shaped the journey, sometimes good, sometimes bad. I think I always found a refreshing perspective in always and looking at oneself in the mirror and then asking, what is your hand in this, and what is going to change with you because of this experience. And because of that, I think it just allowed me to, despite the circumstances, and we had very many incredibly difficult circumstances, and also we had also very many incredibly powerful circumstances that propelled us forward in life and in the business. To look at those things, to be able to develop oneself, to become a better person out of them, right? Both good and bad. So it was always a journey of getting punched, getting pulled forward, pulled backward, but always a journey of growing oneself. And I think that kept me grounded and kept me humble as life went. So if I summarize the journey of life, basically sort of building out a very interesting family of 5 kids, 2 kids in their 20s, 3 teenagers, 1 wife, and then building a business that was always part of our life as well, and building myself to a point where It's about sort of 3 months ago, I left the day-to-day, and then the business still running. I sit on the board and transitioned and handed over the business to a team that had worked with me for a long time. Was always, I think it's summarized in a statement I always say, is that I always, at any one time, always had, my head in the clouds, feet on the ground, heart in life, heart in the business, heart in the family, and faith in God. So head in the clouds is always then saying, look, I think I was brought up by my mom to never let the amount of money in your pocket determine what you think you could do or who you are. So for me, I had, even in the early days when I had no money whatsoever, I had no shame, thinking that we could build a sort of billion-dollar business in Africa. It had none. And my wife jokes about it. When she met me, she was actually my banker. And she always jokes around the fact that she met this guy who had no money but had no qualms talking about the fact that he wanted to build a billion-dollar business. So everybody else thought I was crazy. She was crazy enough to sort of take a leap of faith on that journey. I'm eternally grateful. Heart in the business, heart in the family, and so on. I think that was, I always came to the table with a deep desire to really make that successful. So it made it very possible for me to generally stretch whatever I needed to stretch to actually succeed. And I was always deeply committed to building the business, deeply committed to building the family, and so on. Feet on the ground is that, so it's nice to have fantastic dreams and so on. But in the end, nothing beats discipline, nothing beats learning, nothing beats being a master of your craft and so on. There's no shortcut to those things. It took an incredibly long time. I wanted to build a billion-dollar business I'd promised my wife I'd do it in about 10 years. The truth is that it probably took about 20. Maybe the business will get there sometime in 2022, 2023. But you know what? It doesn't really matter that it took twice as long as it did. We just were there. And the final one, faith in God. So I'm still a person on a journey to finding my relationship with God. So I'm working at it. But the journey, the good things and the bad things that have happened throughout life and my journey have always reminded me that yes, I've done my part, but there are a lot of things that have happened that are not of my own doing, and I think most of the greatest battles always got fought on our knees with my wife and with the family, and that has drawn me closer to God. So as I've succeeded, as I've grown, I think that my relationship with God has probably grown, because I certainly see that I cannot have succeeded without that intervention at different points in life. So thank you very much. That's my story of the last 46 years. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and I hope you get unstuck. Thank you.